Welcome to Bring Out Your Badass Self, a movement to break your negative thoughts and habits and instead focus on building each other up and encouraging fearless authenticity.
Each week, we will get vulnerable and share experiences alongside our guests and audience. Come rediscover your inner badass self.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome, badasses.
Yes, welcome. I have to say today is going to be, I think, a little bit more of a chipper day. I won't be breaking down and crying today, I don't think.
You never know, but you know, I agree. I think it's going to be a more chipper day.
I do too. And so I'm excited about today's topic. And so you voted today's topic as your number one topic you wanted addressed, our inner critical voice. And it can be loud. Sometimes the nagging internal voice is destructive and keeps us from acting in our best interest. So today we're going to talk about what it is, who has it, where it comes from, and how to take power over this hidden enemy. And so, Kate, are you, what are your thoughts on today's topic?
Oh, this topic, it's also one that's near and dear to my heart. We all, I don't think we all struggle with inner critical voice, but I think a lot of us do. Mm-hmm. And I think it's, for those that struggle, it can be just far too prevalent, and kind of an exhausting battle. So yeah, I definitely want to dig in and talk a little bit more about it today and share some of the ways that we've gotten a little good at quieting that inner critical voice.
Yeah. And so we have some hellos. So hello to Tracy. She's joining us from Facebook.
Good morning, Tracy.
Hello to Renee.
Good morning.
She's joining us from LinkedIn. And then Kim Stamps is joining us today from LinkedIn. And so we want to hear from you. So be sure to say hello to us. We also want this to be interactive. So be sure to let us know what your thoughts are. Since this was such a hot topic, we want to hear from you. Like, what is it that you have going on through your head? What are the topics that you have taken?
Right. Why did this resonate? Why did this get the most votes?
Yeah, exactly. Good morning, Dodie.
Good morning, Dodie. Oh, good morning, Steph.
Hello, Stephanie. So, and Gail. Hello, Gail. Welcome.
Hey,
I'm so excited you joined us.
Oh, Gail, your last name reminds me of one of my favorite drinks.
Oh, yeah? What drink is that?
Mango nada.
Oh.
It's mango and chamoy and tahine. So it's sweet and spicy. It's a Hispanic drink, and I love it so much. It's really yummy.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right. We'll continue to let us know if you are new to the show, and also just be sure to let us know that you're here. So
yes, please say hi.
Kate, I thought we might start with today's inspirational song. This was one that was recommended by Brock. It is Jimmy Eat World, and it's called The Middle.
Yes. And let's dance along with us, please.
Yes.
Enjoy.
And so I'm going to enjoy this song. I'm definitely going to dance. So here we go.
Yeah.
Hey, don't write yourself up yet. It's only in your head you feel left out and looked down on. Just try your best. Try everything you can. And don't you worry what they tell themselves when you're away. It just takes some time to fit of you. You're in the middle of the ride. Everything will be just fine. Everything will be alright. Hey, you know they're all the same.
I love it, Brock.
Yeah.
Nice job.
Sweet angel voice.
And so Brock this morning, he's like, how much time? He has been up late doing this song. He is such a perfectionist. He's like, all right, I'm going to send you a song. All right, I'm going to send it. All right, here's the final. All right, here's the final.
Yeah.
And so he's such a perfectionist. I told him this is one of the things that he's going to be working on himself is that he needs to understand that he could sing the phone book, and I think that people would love him. So
Yeah.
but it did have a lot more production in this one.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
It
He's
is.
just,
And the
I have to
lyrics,
tell you, I listened to Blackbird many times over the weekend.
aw,
Many times on repeat. I love, like, when I really get into a song, I love to like saturate, like marinate in it.
mhm.
And I listened to that song for more hours than I would I'd like to admit, honestly.
Yeah, from our previous episode, yeah.
Yes. So if you have
Yeah.
not seen that episode,
Mm.
check it out.
Yeah,
Go back.
absolutely.
Episode 5 was killer.
Yeah. And so let's talk a little bit about these lyrics. And so
Mhm.
Renee actually posted, everything will be just fine. I'm singing along to this one, live right now, just to be yourself. Doesn't matter if you're good enough for someone else. Yes. And so those were some of the lyrics that resonated for her. I
Yes.
like the don't write yourself off yet. It's
Yeah.
only in your head you feel left out or looked down on. And I thought those lyrics really resonated with today's topic.
Yep. 100%.
Yeah.
And then the next one's right after that, Renee
Mhm.
is mentioning too, just try your best, try everything you can. We'll talk more
Mhm.
about this, but that sometimes that repetition is necessary in order to
Yes.
really get through these moments where your inner critical voice is so freaking loud.
Yeah. And I didn't realize the song is called The Middle, but I didn't realize as I started to listen to it just in the middle of the ride. I think that
Yes.
people need to realize that sometimes they get so caught up in the negative that's happening in the moment that they're so caught up in that thought or whatever it is. They just need to
Mhm.
remember we're just in the middle of the ride. This is just part of it. And it'll get better. And and it also talked about don't buy in, just be yourself.
Mhm.
And I loved that part of the lyric too.
Me too.
Yeah.
Loved it. But yeah, I love it. I love all things that are referring to life or our journey as a ride. I just
Yeah.
like that euphemism,
I do too.
It's like, yeah, I want a ticket to that ride.
Yeah. I want to say a quick hello. This is my cousin Livia. Good morning, Livia.
Good morning. I love that name.
Yeah. And so let's talk a little bit about what is an inner critical voice. And before we really get to the inner critical voice, we got to talk about inner monologue.
Mhm.
And so I wanted to start off just talking about it. And it was originally thought that it was a part of the human experience, that everyone has an inner monologue. And it ends up turning out that not everybody actually has an inner monologue. And so the reason that I ended up discovering this is because I have what's called aphantasia. And so when you close your eyes and I tell you, can you imagine a red apple? Now imagine someone biting that red apple. I can't visualize that. And so there are some people that also don't have that inner monologue. And there are other people that are very active. Like I can talk to myself in my head. My inner monologue is I
Your
can
inner monologue game is strong.
yeah, it is, and so, but I can literally, I'll be sitting there talking to someone and I'm thinking things in my head. I'm talking to myself.
Mhm.
Where this morning I was talking to my husband and he's like, I don't know. I don't know if I have an inner monologue. So I was
Yeah.
like, okay. I'm like, but does your voice ever talk to you? Or when you're talking to someone, do you think, oh man, what the heck is this person saying? Or whatever it might be. He's like, I don't know.
Yeah, that's how one of my kiddos was. He was like, Is that a thing?
Yeah.
That happens? People do that?
Yeah.
Should I be doing that? Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So whenever I see articles that say that everyone has an inner critic, I really sort of questioned. I was like, well, how can that be true when not everybody has an inner monologue?
Right.
So I'm curious with the audience, do you have an inner monologue? Do you hear within your own head dialogue? Do you talk to yourself? Do you hear your voice talking to you within your head? So I'm curious for our audience. And so
Yeah. Yeah. Let us know.
Kate, while we're waiting for them to respond, maybe we can cover, so now what is the inner critical voice?
Yeah, it's essentially that negative voice inside your head. So it'll remind us of our past failures or mistakes.
Mm,
Maybe why we can't do something, why we feel we're ill-equipped to do something. It's really self-limiting thoughts that
mhm.
keep us from achieving our goals or what we want to get done or just from being our very best.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
it doesn't have to be a voice, but it's those negative thoughts that really are prevalent and get in your way, you know.
Yeah.
They can be triggering or come from triggers, right? So like
Yeah.
something can happen and it triggers your inner critical voice to start telling you, you're not good enough for this or you're not going to get this shit done.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So here's what our audience said. So Renee said, I do, and I'd like to get rid of it. Well,
Mhm.
maybe today will help you have that inner voice be on the positive side. And I'm going to quickly go to Vanessa's that says, I do, but I can control it to be positive, which I'm thankful for. And so we're interested to hear from you, Vanessa, today as we go through this. What are some of the tricks that you do?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, we're going to be sharing things that we do and would love you to jump in and with the
yeah.
comments.
And Tracy, I love this comment. Good gravy all the time.
I know.
Sorry, I had to do that in a Southern accent.
Totally.
Dodie says, oh, yes, way too much. Gail said all the time. Eric says, absolutely. And Livia said, I talk to myself all the time, full conversations about what and why I'm feeling things. I do the same. I can literally have a full conversation with myself.
Mhm. Yeah.
And so, when we think about the critical voice, it really is keeping us from having our true voice in allowing us to be ourself. And I also want to talk a little bit about, so we've talked about the inner monologue and the critical inner voice. I also want to point out that sometimes your inner voice can also be your intuition. And
Mm.
so this is something that I have that's very strong. And so sometimes I have to ask myself, is this an inner critical voice or is this my intuition talking to me? And so
Mhm.
I have to, one of the things that I also have to do is I have to give the person the benefit of the doubt. And so I had an incident that happened, it's a couple weeks ago. I had individuals that I went out with, and there was a person that very much likes uh, for photos to be edited in a particular way where they look their best. And I'm just not that type of person. And they went to go take a photo, and one of them said, hey Sarah, come join us. And so I went and joined them, and we took the photo, and I noticed this person was very critical of the photo. Now in my mind I was thinking, are they critical because of this person or because I don't fit the image that this person wants to portray?
Mm.
So I was, so intuition wise, it was telling me, oh, she doesn't like the way I look. She doesn't like my fullness. And because she has a particular image of how everyone should look.
Mhm.
And so I was like, so I'm going to give her the benefit of the doubt. We're going to move on. But then lo and behold, once they ended up getting the photo from her, she didn't send it with me. She sent it with just the other three that they had taken. So I was like, well, okay. And so for me, that was my intuition talking to me, I thought, telling me that the reason that she was saying that was because she was probably critical of, and that's her challenge in life.
Mhm.
That's not something I really have to deal with. I hate that she feels she has to modify all of her photos in order for
Right.
them to be, to make her feel like she is whole. And so I just, was like, okay, and I moved on.
Right. So what do you think the difference would have been if that was your critical inner voice rather than
mm,
your intuition?
yeah, if it was my inner critical voice, I would have immediately probably withdrawn from the situation, and I
Felt
would have been like,
shame?
"Oh my god, this person, is ashamed to be around me," and, yeah, this was an adult. So
Stephanie, I love
so
you.
I know. And so Stephanie said, "This was an adult. Like, this, are you sure this wasn't an insecure teenager?" But everyone is going through things. And so the thing that I also have to remind myself is I don't know why it is she feels this particular
Mhm.
way about herself. And I think that's for me, I I I feel empathy for someone that just can't love themselves the way they are.
Yep.
And so she's just not there, and that's
Mhm.
okay. But that's not something that I should take personal. That has to do with her.
Yep.
But if my inner critical voice was really coming at me, then I probably would have withdrawn. I would have been like, I don't want to be here anymore. Let's leave, that type
Mhm.
of mentality. And I was like,
Right.
I'm gonna continue to have fun. I'm gonna dance. I don't give a shit. And so
Yep.
so I moved on and I was myself.
Yeah. Wonderful.
Yeah.
Great example of something that can still be slightly negative, right? Your
Mhm.
intuition was telling you why, and the the behavior that was there, was negative, like
Mhm.
in a way, but it wasn't it wasn't you or an inner critical voice telling you there was something wrong with you.
Right. Exactly. But that's
Yeah.
because I've worked on my inner critical voice. I could have in the past, in the past, whenever I first was starting to date again from my ex-husband, one of the reasons that I felt like he ended up breaking things off with me was because I was gaining weight. And so I ended up becoming very insecure at first
Yeah.
about things, and especially whenever it came to intimacy and things like that. And I ended up having someone that I was dating that they literally just grabbed my belly and were like, "This right here, like you have nothing to worry about." And it was from that moment I was like, you know what, I'm just going to be myself.
Hmm.
And luckily my current husband loves my fullness. It's one of the things, he loves that type of cuddliness. So we have an amazing uh sexual life together. But it was because of that experience and me getting over and just being proud of who I am that allowed
Yeah.
me to be able to be my full self.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah. And so we've talked a little bit already about some examples, but
Yeah.
who can have it and what are some examples?
Yeah. So it's common with like athletes and performers. It's common with folks that struggle with mental health, right?
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
common with depression.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and even, like you said, performers and athletes and even professionals, like even the most successful people can be battling, am I successful enough? Am I doing enough in my career? I mean, think about even sometimes we get so caught up in what title we have or, is this person going to accept me in this particular situation on this project? What does this person think of me? So there's
Yeah.
even things just in our daily lives that we deal
Hmm. Yep. Without a
with. Yeah.
doubt. When we and just because you get good at dealing with your inner critical voice doesn't mean that it's not going to be there at times,
Mhm.
right?
Right.
So it still comes up. It's a matter of how you react, and how you handle it. But I'll tell you, even recently, my inner critical voice was kind of telling me like, why are you doing this show? You don't have a ton of, you don't. this message is out there already, and what are you going to add that's different, or what are you going to, bring to the table? And so I just had some doubts they were really just kind of self-sabotaging doubts, which is common with inner critical voice, right? It's there to kind of take you down. And I mentioned something to Sarah. I said, when there aren't a lot of comments, I get nervous that we're not resonating with folks. And Sarah, do you want to share how you responded?
I go, oh, I said, I immediately just think that people are absorbing the information. So it was funny. We had that dialogue back and forth. She's like, oh, I know. She goes, I immediately went to the negative, and here you are going to the positive. Like, oh no, people are just absorbing the information. So it's all about it. People can assume it's that voice of, oh my gosh, I'm not getting the recognition, and I think that this is when we think about why do we have this critical inner voice, we think about ancient times. In the past, our brain is wired for survival. And so in that moment, even though it wasn't a survival type moment like what we see in the past of alert and potential danger of a lion that's about to kill us, or things
fight
like
or
that.
flight.
Yeah, exactly. That fight or flight. In today's modern world, it's like, oh, we're not getting enough likes, or people aren't commenting, or, oh my gosh, I'm a failure because I'm not making enough money, or even just, things that maybe have happened in a social setting, like what I mentioned earlier. And so all of those types of things in the modern world, it has changed a little bit, but it really has to do with fear. And it has to do with, oh my gosh, I may not be enough. I am not enough, or I'm not good enough. And so it's all of those things that end up impacting or creating that inner dialogue, is because of fear, self-doubt. And it's basically what I call our lower vibration in ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And a lot of times it really does result from past experiences.
Mm-hmm.
I say that to remind us all that we come by it honestly. It's not like we are born and we immediately want to be masochistic. We experience things, we have relationships with people, we have environments that we are grown up in, and that shapes who we are.
Mm-hmm.
That molds us. And often that leads into those voices actually not even being your own, right?
Absolutely. And so I think about, I had a dog. The name was Blackie. It was, of course, a black dog, and it was 3 years old when we got Blackie, and Blackie had been kicked by men, and especially men with black shoes, because it was at a funeral home. And so every time Blackie was kicked, it was by a man. So whenever we ended up bringing the dog to our house, anytime a man was around our dog, it ended up getting very anxious, and especially any man that had dark shoes on. And it loved females because that's what it learned from its past, is that it needs to fear this type of person. And so when we think about that, we are able to understand from the dog's perspective, oh, why it is, oh, well, you have to understand that this is what it goes through. But we don't give that same type of grace to humans. We don't understand that people go through this in their life and in their childhood, and giving them grace and understanding, oh, well, here's why. And they haven't been given the tools to be able to overcome those things as well. So I want to sort of emphasize that when someone does something to us, we also have to understand that they have their inner critical voice that is also triggering them, because it's really a trigger for them, potentially because of their past. And we're going to be we actually interviewed yesterday Casey Ferguson, and we're going to be sharing him in about a month. But he was a really good example. When I met him, he had all of these inner critical voices inside his head that we had to really work on. And we had to say, like, you are valuable. There is value in you. And so but that's not what he learned throughout his life.
Mm-hmm. Right. And there are opportunities sometimes to actually address where those voices are coming from and what they entail. There's a few comments on here that I really would love to connect
Yes.
with. I think Stephanie's comment, it's about her faith and her, spirituality that I think, is really important to think about. No matter what we believe in, what God or what entity or lack thereof, you can find something to trust and focus on that helps that negativity kind of slip away.
Yeah.
Stephanie uses this verse. It's a Bible verse. Fear not, for I have redeemed you. I have called you by your name. You are mine. And for Stephanie, when she remembers that, it helps the negativity melt away. And she feels like if she takes her eyes off of her God, then those crappy emotions will kind of creep in.
Yeah.
I think that's really helpful, Stephanie, for folks.
It is. And so Dodie said, what about talking the one negative thing someone says and fixating on that, no matter how many positive comments?
Oh, I can be the queen of that, Dodie. And it's far more exhausting to address, right? Because you're taking that one thing and it's just like so prevalent. Sometimes you have to actually set up some boundaries for yourself to ensure that doesn't, get out of hand.
Yeah.
If that person is still in your life, it might be great to acknowledge that with them and talk to them about it. And even if you have done, to do it again and again. I can share, I had a great experience doing this with my mom, actually. So,
do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, totally. So my mom, it's hard for me to talk about because my mom was amazing. Like, she married my dad when I was not even 2. And so she was my mom my whole life, but we were so different. Like, she was introverted. Like, she just like everything. We were exact opposites. And we still had a very great relationship, but one of the things she really struggled with as we were getting older was the fact that we were all abusing alcohol and drugs. She had 4 kids, and all of us had very addictive personalities and very, very drawn to it. And it really bothered her in a lot of ways. And so by the time I was in college, my older brother, who's 4 years older than me, had already really, had experienced a lot of bad things due to his alcoholism. And at that time, my youngest brother was also starting to get in trouble. So my mom was just, she was just in the thick of it. And I had gone to this, I was in college and I had a boss who was a couple years older than me, also a college student. And I was attending this dance. And of course, everyone was drunk. And I was very drunk, probably drunker than most, but I got into a bad situation where this boss turned out to be kind of predatory. So he was. I tend to minimize things like this, but no, he, suggested that he wanted to show me something work related. He took me into his office. He trapped me in there. He attacked me. He ripped my nylons. I got out of the room. And I kind of ran home, and I was a couple of miles from my house. And when I got home, I called my mom. It was the first person I called. And unfortunately, the first thing that she said was, why were you so drunk? Getting that drunk puts you in these dangerous situations. And so for several years, as a 20-year-old, I really felt poorly about myself. I had put myself in that situation, and I got a chance to circle back with her and talk with her about that. And we were able to kind of she was able to describe to me where she was coming from, apologize for saying that, apologize for indicating that any of it was my fault. And and kind of wrap me in the love that she would have wanted to do then, and acknowledged, that as a parent you make a ton of mistakes, and she had no idea that one sat with me for so long, and it ended up being a beautiful thing and a
Mhm.
really helpful thing.
And I
But
think that that's huge, Kate. I mean,
yeah.
you identified where that was the voice, and I think that that's important for people, is that a lot of times when you're hearing a voice, you have to stop and say, "Is that really my voice, or is that someone else's voice that I
Right.
hear?" Because a lot of times the reasons we're feeling the negativity is because we were told these things as we were growing up, or for some people maybe it wasn't. Maybe they had a great childhood and it was later on in life, and it was a spouse that they were with that was constantly telling them. Maybe it was a teacher that was telling you certain things. And so stopping and saying, whose voice do I actually hear, whose voice is this, is super critical, because you'll then be able to correlate it to the other person. And I think that this is also super important when it comes to even arguments with individuals. When you're triggered by something,
Mm.
typically it is because of something else. And so I was taught in counseling or in the communication class to stop and say, okay, why am I feeling this particular way? I'm recognizing that I'm triggered. Why is it that I'm feeling this way? Why is it that I'm hearing this particular voice? And recognize whose voice that actually is. And so
Mhm.
most of the time, it's probably your parents, unfortunately.
Mhm.
But other times it could be someone else in your life.
For me, I found that sometimes the most these the things that have come from other people, um, half the time didn't even come from reality. Like, they came from,
Mhm.
points when people were feeling irrational, points
Mm,
when emotions were running high and everyone was dysregulated,
right.
and you tend to say shit you don't mean when you're dysregulated, right? So
Right.
um I get I actually used to get really frustrated with myself for hanging on to something that maybe Jenna said when we were in a conflict and we were both dysregulated, and I had said a bunch of shit too, and she said something, and it stuck with me for
Mm,
years, right? And we had processed it. We knew that it wasn't rational, that it wasn't there. And so instead of understanding and connecting the dots, that I could use like skills and tools to change that in my head, when that would come up, I would go the other route and I would get pissed at myself for not being able to let it go. And so then it's even more negative, right? So on top of having the negative thought and being triggered, then I would judge myself for it. Like, well, fuck you, Kate. That's stupid. Why are you thinking that way? Of course, this is, and then it would go into a whole nother spiral, instead of really understanding the fact that um, you can't always get rid of it the first time you try.
mhm.
And it's a verb, not a noun. You have to keep doing it.
Trying.
And that
Mhm.
the worst thing you can do is get mad at yourself for doing it,
Yeah.
you know?
And so let's talk a little bit about how do you deal with the critical inner voice. And so the first and foremost, you have to have awareness and
Yes.
understanding where it comes from. And so it's stopping and saying, okay, let me evaluate why it is I'm triggered, and
Mhm.
identifying and having awareness that you even have this trigger, or that you even have this critical voice going on.
Mhm.
And then it's really acknowledging it. So the next time it happens, it's saying, "Oh, there's that voice. Remember, this is why it's happening. And so first you got to be aware of it. Then as it's happening, you have to acknowledge it. Oh, there it is again. And then you got to focus on, okay, now how am I going to talk to myself differently? So it is giving yourself grace. It is giving yourself compassion. It is giving yourself encouragement. And, I know that it sounds sometimes hokey, but a lot of times I think that positive affirmations are probably some of the best ways to really focus on this. It's taking that thought, flipping it, and saying, okay, I used to be this, or I'm trying to do this, or it's putting it in a different light. Okay,
Mhm.
I do have value, or I may not be good at this right now, but I'm trying to be good at it. And so it's trying to flip whatever the narrative is that you keep hearing in your voice.
Yeah. And so I'll connect it back to the example I gave you all with my mom. So I experience frequent flashbacks from those different traumas that I have gone through. And so with that particular situation, when I have a flashback, I hear my mom's voice. I hear
Mhm.
that conversation. I see myself sitting on the edge of the bed and calling her, and then I can see myself like collapsing from the conversation and the shame, right? And now what I'm able to do is observe that, like, oh, first of all, I have to observe the flashback. Oh, there it is. And then I have to, have awareness of up and yep, cue the bad scene, cue the phone call scene in your head, right? That comes next. That always comes next, Kate. That's okay. And then now you've talked to mom about this. You know that the what she was dealing with at the time was impacted the way that she handled the situation. And you know what she would have done. And you know that how you would have handled that had you had the skills, and then I just kind of talk myself through it inside my head, and that really works for me. But it all starts with the awareness and the observing. I can't get there if I can't say, oh, there it is. There's that thought. That's the thought that's gonna fuck you up for a few hours if you don't deal with it right now.
Mm. I love something Tracy just posted.
Yes.
This is so huge. So self-deprecating thoughts I mostly deal with are actually from my ego, and how my ego developed that as a way of protecting me growing up. So I work on telling my ego, thank you for trying to protect me, but I don't need that kind of talk to stay safe. Wow,
Ah,
Tracy. I love that, Tracy. That's
yes.
awesome, because that's ultimately what it is you are just trying to protect yourself. As we talked about, you're wired to have fear sometimes in protecting yourself. And so it's that fight or flight type of mentality, but you are recognizing that it's that inner reptilian brain and bringing it out and saying, "Okay, thank you, but this is how I'm going to picture things now."
That gratitude is a wonderful, wonderful piece of that, Tracy,
Yes.
because I mean, that's helpful. We're going to have a whole episode on gratitude at some point,
Mhm.
but that's super helpful in the moment, um, to flip that, to take the observing one more step so you don't fall into the judgment area.
Mhm.
So you literally are thanking the universe or God or whatever,
Mhm.
yourself, for the path you've taken, and you're grateful for it. It made you who you are.
Mhm.
And then you set a boundary. You set a boundary with yourself. You say, I don't need that. I can protect myself still. I don't need it. Thanks for wanting that.
Yeah.
But I'll get to it a different way.
Yeah. I'll also add that sometimes in situations, I've had situations like even in a business situation, for example, where I'm like, I have something that happened and it's going through my mind and I'm worrying about it, worrying about it, worrying
Mhm.
about it. And I have come to the ability to be able to just sort of sit down and I meditate and I literally asked the universe to, I can no longer hold this. This is something that is for you. I'm going to release it. And this is now yours to let me know how it is I should proceed. But I'm basically, and it's the same thing with people that, if they don't call it source, they call it God, and releasing it to God. It's the same type of concept. And so I think that, for me, I think it's important for people to understand they're ultimately the same. I use source, I use universe, but it's releasing that negative energy. And I think that it's important for people to understand that negativity lives within us. We are all energy. And when we continue to allow that negative energy to surround us and we don't release it, we will never get the positive aspect or the positive energy within us. We're just energy. We're, the entire universe is, and we can choose whether we want that negative energy or that positive energy.
Right. Yeah. I think that's extremely helpful. I'm curious if Vanessa has anything to add at this point, that we're talking about,
Yeah.
how do you deal with the critical voice? Also curious if Renee is hearing some tactics that she might be able to use to
Yeah.
get rid of hers. So,
Yeah.
um,
And I'm going to
and
post what
I
Dodie
was
said.
just going to say,
Yeah.
let's share what Dodie said.
So she said, focus on the strength you had to overcome that and the ability you had to react. Yeah.
Yes,
And so
exactly.
he added that my mom was always toughest on me when she was afraid that I could have been hurt, similar to your mom.
Yeah, I experienced that as a mom too,
Hmm.
myself. But yeah, fear is such a big driver, right?
Hmm.
Fear is at the root of a lot of our um, critical thoughts, whether they're critical of someone else or whether they're critical of yourself or whether they're that inner critical voice. A lot of it is derived from fear.
Yeah. And I'll share something. I didn't know whether I would share this or not. And I hope my mom is okay with me sharing this, but it has to do with what Dodie just said and also with what I shared and how it is that I believe. My mom, several years ago, was, I think, fearful that I didn't believe as she did. And she felt, I think, that a lot of it had to do more with herself and feeling she had basically not done her job. And so she felt that she was a failure in me not believing like she did. And I ended up saying to my mom, I said, Mom, I'm like, so do you believe that I'm a good person? And she said, Well, yeah, of course I do. And I said, Well, isn't that really what matters in life? And so it made her stop and think about, people don't always have to believe as you do. Ultimately, we should be focused on, are people kind? Are people good in life? And focusing on me not believing just as she believed, she felt she was a failure, should be something that allows her to release that and say, you know what? You're right. That isn't really what is important in life. And maybe
Right.
that was something that was ingrained in her
Yeah.
as well that she needed to release.
Yeah. And this was about spirituality for you and your mom, right?
Yeah. Mhm.
Um, and I think I, you know, it's a beautiful thing that your mom can find such comfort, in her faith. But as long as you are finding the same comfort from your beliefs, that's what matters at the end
Yeah.
of the day.
I'm not sure who the Facebook user is, but they said there's a lot of healing that we do that our parents haven't done for themselves.
Oh yeah, those cycles.
Yeah, absolutely. And so Vanessa added some things. She said, definitely acknowledging it is key and just keeping a positive mindset. I think if may seem selfish, but just worrying about yourself first, because people are always going through things you have no idea about. Kate and I were talking about this, is that you just never really know what people are going through.
Yeah. And that's, that goes back to I think any of the examples or any of the things that the source of your inner critical voice, if it's someone else,
Mm.
they were going through something
Yeah.
that it was about them and not you.
Yeah. And so Renee said, I definitely have, although my inner voice is telling me to fight, it's a challenge for sure. And so,
But that's good that you also have a voice telling you to fight. Like, that's your intuition.
yep.
Your intuition is saying, your gut is like, Renee, you're too good for this. No, fight this shit.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about inner critical voice in the business world.
Yeah.
And so this is one of the key things that I look for when I'm working with someone now. So as a leader, it's yes, we need to build people up in their skill sets and all of those types of things.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things that I've actually found to be even more important is to understand when people say, I'm concerned, or I'm not good at this, or all of those different, anything that is negative. I'm like, okay, so, and I'll give an example. We have someone in our company that Kate and I were talking about that says, I'm just not good at technology. And so we're going to be actually having this conversation with this person to let them know, okay, you're not good at technology yet. And so saying that I'm not good at technology is you telling the universe, I'm never going to be good at technology. Don't even help me. Don't give me the skill sets. Don't give me the resources. Don't allow me to be good at technology. And so it's important that we hear that voice. She's saying it out loud, but it's okay. I'm not good at it yet. What do we need to do to help you to become better at technology?
Yes. And you're not good at it yet, or also checking your facts, because this particular person is growing in this area. They are getting better and better.
Yeah.
And I used to do this to myself too. Like, especially when I first got my diagnosis, there was like this time when I was like, oh, well, I'm just not good at emotions. Clearly, I'm nuts and I'm not good at it, and that's what I would, for a while, that gave me some comfort, which I think is totally okay. That gave me some comfort as I was like adjusting. But then, one of my therapists was able to point that out, like, okay, you've said that now a few times. And, what I see is that you are working your ass off. And if we actually check the facts and look at situations that have happened and how differently you handled those things, you are getting good at emotions.
Yep.
And so that's a part of this. And for this particular person, it definitely is.
Yeah. And I think as leaders, where we have to really spend time is hearing some of those comments that people say, having those one-on-one conversations with them, also making sure that they hear the one-on-one appreciation. So when you hear someone that's very critical of themselves, sometimes, like Dodie said earlier, sometimes they got to hear it 10 times to overcome that one time they heard that they weren't good at things. So sometimes you have to spend extra time with certain individuals to get them to see, like, let's take that voice, push it to the side. I want you to hear me that you are actually really good at this. And this is not something that I want you to continue to worry about. And so a part of leadership is really focusing on where people's strengths are and really that affirmation in getting them to hear it.
Yep. And like Gail's saying right now, when we are in a position of managing or even just working, just being a colleague of someone, has hard time sometimes seeing their own growth. It is hard to check the facts, especially in the moment. And but it's it's helpful to have someone else point it out. Sometimes other people can see it better than you can. So as you know, one of my jobs as a manager is to point those things out.
Yeah.
And as a colleague, I do that for my coworkers as well. Like, you excel at this. You're really good at this. You know, thank you for contributing in this way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll give my most recent business critical voice that came to me. So I had one of our colleagues that gave his resignation. And it was someone, I know, and it's someone that everyone loved. And I started thinking to myself, okay, well, what did I not do? Like, as a manager, what is it that I could have done better? Is there something I missed? So that inner critical voice was really coming at me saying, God, like, what did I not do? And then yesterday was a very emotional day. I ended up watching his exit interview, and I found out that I did everything I could.
It had nothing to do with you.
Yeah, and so
in fact, you actually positioned him to be in a place where he could look to other things because you helped him grow so fucking much.
Yeah. And so it really made me feel better, but it gave me self-doubt. I was like, well, crap, what did I miss? Because I felt like I was like, did I push this person too hard? That's what I started thinking.
Right.
I was like, what did I not see? What did I not do? And in actuality, he ended up saying that I made him grow so much, that I gave him so much confidence that he was ready to take the next step. And unfortunately, within our company, there's only so much growth. We know that. We're a smaller firm. So I was like, you know what? We all wished him the best. And sometimes that's just where life takes us. We have to have another opportunity that's going to come our way. And I was really happy that I just helped him grow as a person.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. Before we go, I would love to talk a little bit about our inner voice as parents, like with our kids, or because you can have some fun with this. So Sarah and I both did this. So we sat down with our kiddos and asked them, what is something that you hear from us a lot? So like, what, when you think of Mama Kate, what is the thing that you think I say to you the most, or what's kind of resonates with you? And then also, like, is there a time when I said something to you and it really stuck with you and you think of it often and it makes, and you feel like it's critical?
That it bothered you. And so I did this with my daughter at age 4, and then I did it again here recently at 12. And at 4, she said that mom always says thank you. And then at age 12, she said that mom always says, you are so beautiful. And I thought, well, that's great. And then just yesterday or the day before, I was talking to her and I was telling her about this particular topic. And I said, there was something that went on. And I said, well, if that's the worst thing that you've ever heard from me, I said, I'm doing pretty good. And I said, have you ever heard anything worse? And she said, actually, I have. And I was like, oh. And I said, what was that? And she said that I had said that she was a spoiled brat. And I said, did I say you were a spoiled brat, or that you were acting like a spoiled brat? And she said that I was acting like a spoiled brat. And so we spent some time talking about that. And it was also enlightening for her. She didn't realize all the things that were going on at that time. It was during the pandemic. And I let her know that she had actually been failing school for the first part of school because we had someone else helping. And once I ended up getting all the grades, I was like, whoa, she's failing. So I was spending a lot of time focusing on her getting her grades up. And she just wanted to go out and play. And as a 3rd grader, yeah, of course. She's like, what do I need to do to go out and play? But she was acting like a spoiled brat. And I was like, Riley, I'm like, you were acting like a spoiled brat. I'm like, you need to focus. You need to do this. But this was something that was stuck in her head. And so we talked about it. And I got her perspective. She got my perspective. And it helped us to see each other's point of view.
Yeah, and it would be really interesting if you circle back. You should make a note. Circle
Yeah.
back in a year from now and
Mhm.
see if that is still in her mind. See if that is still
Yeah.
an inner critical voice for her.
Well, and I did also emphasize to her, so I told her some positive things as well. And I said, "Look," I said, "I've actually seen a huge difference in you." So I also focused on the positive and
Mhm.
where it is that she is now. And so I think that that's also important as parents, is that we're also saying, "Yeah, at that time you were."
Mhm.
And but I have seen growth in you. And so
Mhm.
focusing on the growth and the positives.
Yep. Yeah.
And
One of
so
my
you
kiddos,
yeah.
yeah, one of my kiddos. So a couple of my kiddos didn't have a thought about it. They knew what I say to them, and they were like like positive, cute things. And but my 8-year-old, who is probably of all of my 6 kids the most has the highest EQ, emotional IQ. And I knew there were things that has stuck in his mind because he has referenced them before with both of his parents. So his was a time where I guess this past winter, he and Bree, our youngest, were playing a game, and they were the game involved him throwing one of her toys out into the snow and her running to go get it. And he then finished off the game with locking her out of the house. And I think this sounds like a shitty time for Bree. Like, is Bree really enjoying this? I don't think she is. And Bree was like, and he was like, she loves it. It's a nice game. And I was on my way back to my office, and I also, just didn't have the energy to deal with it in the moment. And I said something very sarcastic, and he remembers the face I made and everything. He said that I pursed my lips, and I said, sounds really nice. And then I walked away. And so that stuck with him. And we had to talk about, sometimes I use sarcasm as a coping mechanism, but it's not an effective way to communicate with you, with the other person. And so we had a nice conversation about it last night, actually. It was fun.
Yeah, I love that. And so I would
Mhm.
love to hear from you guys if you have kids, going and talking to them and hearing what it is that they said. So
Yeah.
please add comments.
Yeah, yeah. Post them after the fact. It's always cute and it's always fun. Like it was great to hear that my kids know that I ask them for hugs a lot. Or, Lucas said, well, what you say to them most is, hi, how was your day? Because I always see Luca at the end of the day. And that's just how we connect. We talk about our days. He asks about work and I ask him about his work and his day, so
Yeah.
it's cute.
So Livia has a comment. She said, yes, the majority of my inner voice revolves around parenting, raising a special needs child with special norms or societal norms and expectations, worrying about her picking up other voices and translating it into her inner voice. I think that's also very important. I actually did this with my daughter. It's been a little while ago, and I asked her, if she, how do you have any other adults that have said something to you that you think was not nice? Or so talking to them about
Hmm.
toxic adults.
Hmm.
And so she had an instance, and I can't remember it right now, but we talked through it. And I think that that's also really important, is that,
Hmm.
and I try to tell her, I'm like, well, you also have to understand that this person, this teacher, or, whatever
Hmm.
the situation might be, even your peers, things like that, they may be, I always tell her, you need to also understand they may be going through something in their lives.
Yep.
Maybe that's something that they're experiencing. So that's why they are also acting in the way that they are. And so I
Definitely.
talked to her about giving people grace, but understanding, look, you don't have to hear that voice. And when I asked her, I said, so is that something that that continued to bother you? And she said, no, I just said, this person doesn't know what they're talking about. And I was like, good.
Hmm.
And so I
Perfect.
think that's really important, to also understand that other people could be impacting your kids too, and having that conversation with them.
Yep. And then, teaching them how to surround themselves with the best energy possible.
Yeah.
A lot of times they don't have a choice if it's a teacher or someone in power, but at the same time, it can be a good opportunity to model that type of behavior or that type of thinking, for the future.
Yeah.
And then speaking of energy, real quick, we're at the end of our time here, but
Mhm.
let's not forget, for those of you that are slightly interested in astrology, Sarah always says, just like the moon impacts the waves of the oceans and the large lakes on our planet, there's some real science behind astrology, and today is the first day of Mercury retrograde. So
Mhm.
as we were falling asleep last night, my wife Jenna said, this is with the solar eclipse and the start of Mercury retrograde, this is a perfect opportunity to let go of things that are not serving you.
Yes. And so it's important to understand a little bit more about how energy is impacted through astrology. So if that's something that's of interest to you, I actually have a couple of people you can go check out. I like to watch Pam Gregory. She's on YouTube. And then I also have someone on Facebook. It's actually Astrology Learners Community with Linda Mendoza. And so if you're interested in either of those, let me know and I can post those. But I've learned a lot through astrology as well on how it impacts. It's not just about sun sign and things like that, but also how the planets, as they are aligning, how that energy changes. And also depending on when you were born, for example, if you were born in retrograde, it's actually the opposite. You'll actually feel better. But people that weren't born in retrograde will feel it more negatively sometimes.
Yeah. And Jenna's told me that retrograde happens like 3 times a year, and it's not always, it's not the same time necessarily. So you could have been born during a retrograde and not know it, so
Mhm.
be helpful to get your birth chart done to understand that. And then the other thing that's common with Mercury retrograde is your intuition is actually stronger. So this may be these next days, and starting today, this may be a great opportunity to really start to build awareness around what's my gut, what's my intuition, and how is that different from the inner critical voices that I hear, and kind of separate them.
Yeah. And so should we do the outro or should we do the song again?
Ooh, I love the song.
All right, let's do the song. We're gonna go out with a song, then we'll wrap things up. But we hope that today's topic helped you, and you have found ways through the comments from our audience as well as us to quiet that inner voice.
Definitely. Let this fuel your Friday. Go have yourself a kick-ass weekend. Go find your inner badass. Love you.
Hey, don't write yourself off yet. It's only in your head you feel left out. You look down. Just try your best. Try everything.